Welcome back to the Longview PD On Air podcast. I'm your host, Michaela Vaughn.
And I'm Ladarian Brown. Today's episode is a special one as we look ahead to America 250, celebrating 250 years of American history, the formation, the foundation, the beginning of this great country of ours.
And joining us, we have Jennifer White. She is the executive director for the Gregg County Historical Museum. So helping us kind of look at all this history and maybe connect it with Longview. So thank you for being here with us.
Oh, thank you so much for asking me to come. I'd love to talk about it.
So to get us started, can you just kind of explain why America 250 is such an important milestone?
Oh, yeah. So America 250 is an important milestone because of the type of nation that was created, the fact that we started something brand new, something the world had never seen before. And we've engaged on this experiment. We've had triumphs, we've had failures, but overall, it's been a success. And so it's time for us to celebrate that. It's time to look at how we started and what it means to be an American, how this identity was formed, and look at the next 50, 100, 200 years and where we're headed.
And so why is it important for communities like Longview to take part in celebrating something like that? Because we've got all kinds of, we just did the big 250 kickoff, and we've got all kinds of events going on. You guys have special
exhibits?
Yes, exhibits. You guys have special exhibits at the museum.
We do. I think it's important because it's unifying. You know, it's a common experience. It's a shared experience. It's something, again, that we need to celebrate because you can't withdraw from America. You can't withdraw from what it means to be American. You're here. We're all taking part of this grand social experiment. So we need to identify what is good, what is worth celebrating, and just do it as a whole. I think it builds community. It pulls people together. And that's kind of the purpose of it, is to remind us that we have shared experiences and shared backgrounds, and we're not as different as some people want you to believe, or it's not as divisive. We just kind of have a rally around the flag type thing. You know, the recent Artemis event that just happened with the astronauts coming down, that was a huge American moment, and everyone was celebrating that. And so America 250 is the same way. We want to celebrate who we are, recognize the success, and look at what it means to be an American, what's good about it, how we are succeeding when so many others have failed.
I think that's interesting when you said this great experiment. I never thought of America as an experiment until President Obama came. That is something that he said continuously, that we really are a big experiment. Mm-hmm. And we're kind of, the plane was built as it was flying, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that's pretty cool. But when you talk about 250 years of American history or 250 years of America, what are some of the major themes or turning points that you think people should remember and highlight within our nation?
Obviously, the pursuit of freedom in all forms. When the Mayflower landed, they were in pursuit of freedom. When pioneers were moving across the westward plains, they were in pursuit of freedom. The Civil War being fought was in pursuit of freedom. The Civil Rights Act and the sit-ins were in pursuit of freedom. And so that's a huge part of it. And so our government, when it was created, it was designed to protect people from government. It was designed to give the citizens the most freedom possible while still providing a structure. You know, it's of the people, for the people, and by the people. And that all boils down to freedom of choice, freedom of movement, freedom of faith. And so the pursuit of freedom, I think, is the biggest part of what America is.
That's a great way to put that. I appreciate that perspective. But when we talk about the history of our nation, from your standpoint, how do we balance in our nation's progress. You're talking about the pursuit of freedom, but also be honest about some of the struggles and the shortcomings that we've had in that pursuit of freedom.
Oh, absolutely, be honest, but also do not have such a narrow view to think that it's only an American failure. Like, so if we want to talk slavery, about the Civil War, slavery has existed since time began.
Correct.
And it's only the Western civilization that actively worked to end it. So yes, we had this horrible stain on our legacy, but we actively ended it, where it's still existing in some parts of the world today.
Correct.
And so to frame it as a uniquely American failure is ingenuous, I think. I think you need to look at the fact, yes, we had it. Yes, we engaged in it. Yes, it is horrible in all of its forms, but also we sacrificed hundreds of thousands of people or thousands of lives to end it. We fought to end it. It was that spread. It wasn't just an acceptance and growth and allowed to ferment or fester. And so we do have failures, but I'm going to say there's nothing new under the sun. There's no failure that America engaged in that had not been seen before. So you have to look at what was our response to that.
There you go. Yeah.
And so how did we learn from that and still find a way to encourage people to pursue freedom, to pursue the happiness, or to pursue their liberty?
Well, I think even with every failure that our nation has had, that's the beauty of our Constitution.
Mm-hmm.
It has some, for lack of better terms, fluidity with it, to where there's a wrong, we can correct it.
Yes, it is a living document. It's the shortest written constitution in the world that is still active. It has fewer words than any other written constitution that's still active in the world today.
Didn't know that.
I also didn't know that.
The purpose and the reason it is because it is vague. You have freedom of religion. Okay, so what does that mean? The Constitution doesn't lay out step by step by what that means. It is left up to the judiciary, to the Supreme Court, to define that for that society at that time. So we have Supreme Court decisions that are made, Supreme Court decisions that are overturned, but they're all constitutional because the Constitution is vague and it is left up to interpretation. So the response and the reason that it is so active is because the way it was created, it wasn't a micromanaging document. It was a statement of the ideals and the values that we should all strive for, but it is up to the individual and to society at that time to identify what that means.
Wow. That was good.
I taught government for 30 years.
Really?
I did.
Where?
I retired from Spring Hill after 15 years.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Okay.
So I'm loving this.
Okay, so when people think about American history, I guess they kind of think of the East Coast because that's kind of where we landed.
13 colonies.
Right. How does East Texas and specifically Gregg County fit into that story?
Okay, so America 250, American formation was the 13 colonies. However, the oldest city or the oldest recognized town in North America is San Augustine, Florida. And so as they move west, the people who moved west came from the east, and they brought their belief system, they brought their ideals, they brought their work ethic, they brought all of those values with them. And so it just kind of spread out across. And what we're celebrating isn't necessarily Jamestown, isn't necessarily the Battle of Bunker Hill. We're celebrating the ideals that were created. And so those are common, whether you live in Virginia, whether you live in Idaho, New Mexico, or Texas. And so we fit in because, again, it's our shared experiences. It's our collective, I guess.
I like that.
And so how could communities like Longview and Gregg County think about our place in the broader story of America?
Oh, well, I'm so glad you asked that. So, because I am a history nerd and I'm a government nerd, I feel like the Historical Museum lives for this moment. This is our moment to shine.
Mhm.
So, everything we do, whether it was our February and March exhibit where freedom rides, or what we have opening next week, Wheels That Formed a Nation, it's what has driven us. How have we contributed to this sense of American identity? Right. So, Texas is known the world around. We're cowboys. We have cows. Okay, great. That's awesome. So if that is what it means, or that in people's mind to be American, to be a cowboy, to have cows, to have horses, when they think of American, we're loud, we're rough, we're outdoors. Okay, so how did they get that concept? What gave them that impression? And how did we get there? And so what we're doing is we're celebrating everything that happened, or how Texas, East Texas, contributed to this concept of American identity. You know, we can talk about oil, right?
Mm-hmm.
The offshore oil drilling platform was designed and patented by Laterno. Okay, that's East Texas. You know, we're a railroad town. We played such a role in so many things and contributing to what it means to be an American, that we need to celebrate that. Whether it is Super Bowl champions, whether it is Oscar winners on the stage, whether it is the oil, whether it's cattle drives, whether it's railroad, East Texas was at the middle of it. We had a role to play, and we played a very significant role. And so the America 250 we're looking at, as far as the museum is concerned, is what did we contribute to the American identity, and how do we celebrate that?
I mean, you mentioned Laterno. A lot of people don't realize how impactful Mr. Laterno was, and even the school that we have. I mean, I've been on the campus a bunch, and majority of the kids there are from up north or even foreign countries, because they leave here and they are some of the greatest engineers in the world, but they're coming to Longview because of that. I mean, you have Boeing and all those. This is where they come to hire their employees for their big companies, and East Texas is playing a huge, putting a real big part in
going out the world.
Yes.
So,
and that's it took me forever to get there, but that's what I was trying to say.
Yeah. So what's happening here is impacting the world. We can look at, Laterno Industries that was just purchased by Komatsu. Those massive earth movers that led to construction, that led to expansion, that, drove progress. It happened here, and so that's one thing I have learned working at the museum is every day I go to work, I'm finding out something new about Longview that I'm just amazed by. But if I, as a teacher, as an educator for 30 years, didn't know it was here, you can't expect everybody else to know it's here. And so our role at the museum is outreach to make sure people know what we have, and to be proud of Gregg County. Gregg County, from 1872 to 2026, it's like everything else. We've had good days, we've had bad days, we've had shameful histories, we've had triumphant stories. But overall, on a whole, we're a tremendous success. I would say Longview ISD is doing a fantastic job of educating everyone. If you want to be international baccalaureate, if you want to learn to be a butcher, if you want to be in CTE, if you want to be creative, they have something for everyone. If you're an athlete, they have something for everyone, and they're doing a tremendous job of it. And so we can go back and look at, yes, it was a segregated school. Yes, they had the black school and the white school, but look who they are now. Like, let's look at who they are now and what they've accomplished from that. And so, again, I think sometimes in society today, we're so cynical and we're so pessimistic that we forget to celebrate the wins. Like, take the win. let's focus on the win, because that's going to get you farther than focusing on the slights and focusing on the negatives.
Yeah, this month we're celebrating 125 years as a law enforcement agency here. And in that 125 years, we've had some god-awful days.
Absolutely.
But we've had some great ones too. Looking at where we started and where we are today, now I'm able to say we're the most professional law enforcement agency, especially in East Texas.
Mm-hmm.
And I got the numbers to back it up. But
there you go.
As the executive director of the Gregg County Historical Museum, can you think of some history standpoints that may better help us understand from a Gregg County standpoint the American experience? What do y'all have? What are y'all exhibiting now that helps people see the history up close and personal?
Up close and personal, like anecdotal individual stories. You want an individual story, or do
Sure.
you want a broad view?
Sure.
Last week, it's only been last week. Last week, we debuted 3 new exhibits downstairs. And one of them are our athletes, right? You have Charlie Neal. I'm not a baseball person. I didn't know Charlie Neal. Longview, Texas, played with Jackie Robinson, one of the first MLB players of integration. Okay. If you're not a baseball fan, did you know who he was? Did you know his story? We have so the exhibit that's opening next week. We're focusing on how we got here. Everything, we're defining wheels that formed a nation as anything that pushed us forward or progress. So we're starting with the wagon wheel and going to the railroad and to the earth mover tracks of Laterno, to the records of Elvis Presley. Anything like that helped create who we are. Elvis Presley was known in Gladewater, played at the Rio Palm Isle. Johnny Cash wrote his song "I Walked the Line" in a Gladewater hotel.
I didn't know any of that.
I know, that's what I'm saying. Like, there's so much to celebrate, and there's so many stories that people don't know, because a lot of times they look at the museum and they go through and they spend 15 minutes. But there's fun little anecdotes and stories that drive who we are, that we need to recognize, I think, take time to reflect and acknowledge that all of these pieces have created really a great town. When I graduated from Spring Hill, and I left right after high school because Longview was way too small for me. I went to the University of Texas at Austin, wasn't coming back. 3 children later, we came home because my husband was a football coach, athletic director, and he was getting out and starting to work with some real estate. And I had, and this is a shame on me, I had 2 children 10 months apart, and I needed grandparents. I needed help. You just need help. You have a 3-year-old and then 2. So we came back for just a couple of years till the kids were older. And then once they were older and we could handle it, we were leaving. My kids are 3rd generation Spring Hill graduates. My husband sat on the school board. I retired in Longview because it was a good place to raise a family. The same thing that drew my parents here is what drew us here. And so Longview needs to embrace that. We need to create places for parents and grandparents to have these experiences and these bonding opportunities with their kids. And I think Longview is doing a really, really good job of it. So if you compare downtown Longview to downtown Tyler Square, that's everybody knows the downtown Tyler Square. Where do you walk to around the square in Tyler? Restaurants? That's pretty much it. Well, at Longview, you have World of Wonders, you have the LMFA, you have the Gregg County Historical Museum. You have restaurants, you have ice cream, you have a place of community and of gathering. And so, I think as the museum, we need to foster that and we need to remind people and to show visitors that this is a great place to be. You know, like you said, we have an outstanding police force. You know, going to the symphony Saturday night. The symphony is top notch.
Mm-hmm.
The Longview Symphony is incredible. We have theater groups. We have improv groups. We have a world-class education facility. You have community college. You have amazing public schools and private schools. And so we need to make the public aware of that and proclaim it loud.
Yeah.
You know, this is who we are. This is we're really the culmination thus far of American 250, right? Because we're American success stories. Everything that the hurdles we've overcome, the victories we've had, the successes, we're doing something right here. And so I think Longview as a whole, and like with the American 250 celebrations, need to take this opportunity to say it loud.
Like, speaking of local history, we used to have a national Negro League baseball field here.
Was that Stamper Park?
Stamper Park.
Okay, so the Cannibals get their own historical marker, and the museum is hosting a block party on June 27th. Hot dogs,
Really?
baseball, and apple pie.
What?
And we are going to kind of do a ribbon cutting, a little ceremony for that historical marker.
So here's the crazy part. I'm also the pastor of Parkview Baptist Church.
Okay.
The original name of Parkview was Job's Chapel Baptist Church.
Okay.
The whole reason why they changed the name to Parkview is because from the front doors of the church, you could see the National Negro League field. And so they said Parkview.
Wow.
That is
So
awesome.
that's how we even got the name of our church.
That's crazy.
It's
That's cool.
because of that stadium.
That's cool.
Only way I found that out is by becoming the pastor of Parkview.
That's right. You wouldn't know that any other way. Yeah, so we're doing a block party. I mean, what's more American than
That's neat.
baseball
Yeah.
and hot dogs?
So
And
we want to make sure we plug that when we put this out, because I think that's going to be pretty cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. Are there any, maybe just even talking about the baseball thing, are there any lesser known moments that are cool to you that maybe other people in Longview don't really know about that are part of our history?
Okay, so this blew my mind when I found out. We talked about Laterno University.
Mhm.
So prior to that, it was Harmon General Hospital,
Correct.
which was for military. We actually, in Longview, Texas, held Nazi POWs. We had them on the campus of Harmon General Hospital, Laterno University. We have
Really?
a photo of them in the museum. And one of our advisory board members, he's getting up there. He told us, he said, I remember as a young boy, if you went by there, you saw them in the yard because it had the gates and the barbed wire, and they were in the yard. And so we have pictures of some of them. So we had Nazi POWs during World War II, and Harmon General Hospital had a female baseball team.
What?
And so some of their nurses, one of my docents down at the museum, his aunt played on that baseball team, and she was hired not for her nursing skills, but because she played shortstop. And so they would perform their nursing duties for about an hour a day, and then they would play baseball because it entertained the recuperating soldiers. It entertained the POWs, kind of kept them out of mischief. And they won some league. We have a picture of them with their championship trophy from Harmon General Hospital.
Wow.
That is,
I know. That's what I'm saying. Like every day you uncover something and go, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I've been watching so much about the World War II. I'm weird, so I'm kind of going on this whole American history journey with documentaries and stuff. And World War II is all I've watched stuff about for the past month.
Mhm.
And I never knew that we had Nazi prisoners of war.
I didn't
Yeah.
know.
Come to the museum. I'll show you a picture.
Wow.
We even have their flag, the flag of the regiment that we captured and had at Harmon Hospital.
So let's transition to, we're a police department. This is a police department podcast. So, of course, we got to talk about law enforcement.
Absolutely.
So from a public safety perspective, what did law enforcement or keeping the peace look like in East Texas over time?
Texas Rangers. Texas Rangers existed before we were even a state. And so, when I think law enforcement in East Texas, I think of Glenn Elliott, who was, according to Paul Harvey, you and I may know who that is, was a Rangers Ranger, the epitome of what it meant to be a Texas Ranger. He solved the Kentucky Fried Chicken murders when he was here. He's buried here. His funeral service was here. We celebrate Lone Wolf Gonzalez, who basically in 3 days cleaned up the town of Kilgore after the oil boom. One day he went around and identified the bad players in work clothes. The next day he went around in his uniform and said, "Hey, I need you to leave town by tomorrow." Third day they didn't, so he took a big chain and wrapped it around the Kilgore First Baptist Church, arrested them, shackled them to this chain to where they couldn't sit down or they couldn't set up. They were crouched, left them there overnight, went the next day and goes, "You ready to leave?" And they did. One Ranger. So I think consistency, predictability, and fairness, again, good days, bad days, for the most part, has contributed to the success of the county. What draws people here is the small town feel and the sense of security that comes with competent professional law enforcement.
Well, thank you for that.
You're most welcome.
How does that compare from, I guess, when law enforcement started in East Texas to now? How does it compare looking at it?
So you're catching me on my history of law enforcement. So, and I have to go back to like Dalton days. We just celebrated that. That was the community rose together to defend itself and to stand up for itself. My whole existence, I guess, for what I can remember, I've thought that this was a safe place to be, that law enforcement was always there to assist and to protect, the things to protect and to serve. I don't know if that's all police departments or like TV police, but, my experience with law enforcement, and again, as a teacher, watching students or friends or former students, run-ins, I guess, with that, it's always been fair, as a whole. I keep going back to fair just because I think quality, like, you talk about the predictability.
Mm-hmm.
If I run a stop sign, I know I'm going to get it.
Right.
It's not. If, it's not a guess on what's going to happen. And so I think with that comes a sense of security and the fact that there's no fear because you know what's going to happen. And so I don't know if that answered your question or not, but that's kind of what my sense of law enforcement has been, is they are there to protect us and to be fair.
So I know this is probably going to strike a nerve for you as the executive director of our museum and
former teacher.
Yeah, this is just, I already know. But why is it important for people, especially younger generations, to stay connected to local history and not just the overall American history? We need to know that too. Don't get me wrong, but why should they stay connected to local history?
Local history is what impacts you. We have federal laws, but that doesn't really impact you on a day-to-day basis. Again, I'm a government teacher, so you vote in local elections because the local elections are going to have more impact on your day-to-day living than the federal elections. Whether it's a school board, how early do I have to start school? Well, it's up to that school board. Mm-hmm. What day do we start? Well, it's up to that school board. And if you don't like that, well, then you vote for the school board. Voting for president doesn't change it. And so without staying connected to history, especially local history, those stories get lost. And so you have to be very intentional and motivated to connect to the younger group. Museum audience visitors have changed. Their attention span has changed. What they're looking for has changed. But you can't just write it off and go, oh, well, if they want to learn, they learn. No, you have to be intentional and you have to meet them where they are. Otherwise, it fades. And the saying, those who don't know the past are condemned to repeat it, right? Whether it's a local level or national. So it's very important on the local level to know your history. Again, it keeps going back to that same theme, to know where we came from and where we're headed. So if you never check your course, like, am I headed on the right direction? Because you don't know where you started. How do you know where you're going? Like, how do you know what direction to move if you're not grounded in a starting position? And so what have we done? What have we tried? How am I going to get here? And so local history, I think, plays a big role in that. We talked about Stamper Park. Why Stamper Park such a big deal? I tell you, students that I taught don't know Stamper Park because it's not, Longview. And this is what kind of blows my mind. Longview is almost like two completely different towns.
Three
completely different towns. I haven't got to the third one. It's, so when I left the classroom and came down to the museum, I'd have people all the time, well, so-and-so, or, I'm like, I have no idea who we're talking about. I don't know. I don't know where that is. I don't know what this is, because we tend to isolate ourselves.
Yeah.
We never leave our little radius. And so that's a huge, it can be a huge problem if we're not intentional,
right,
and making an effort to educate. Kids will take in maybe 25% of what you tell them, I think, but that doesn't mean you stop talking to them.
That's true.
And so that's kind of like the education. You meet them where they are. You've got to get a hook. At the museum, we talk about a mercantile. They have no idea what that means, but they do know Amazon Prime.
Yeah.
So if I start with Amazon Prime,
Right,
and we start working backwards, we're like, I got it. My generation, I knew the Sears Christmas wish book, going through the Sears catalog,
Circling what you
finding
want.
what I wanted, and it was massive. I found out the other day that you could have ordered a house through Sears in the early 1900s.
Really?
Yes. We even have, you can order a house through Sears and they would deliver it. Thank you. Again, another fun little tidbit. But so you have to tell them the story, because again, they're like, what? You have to tell them the story, but you have to be intentional with it.
That makes sense.
So for those who have not visited yet, what can they expect when they come to the Gregg County Historical Museum?
Oh my. I will say this. Coming on different days gives you a different perspective.
Okay.
Okay. We have guides, docents that'll guide you through. And they're like everybody else. They like some stories more than others. And so the exhibits don't necessarily change, but the guides' perspectives will.
Gotcha.
And so we have one of our docents who is a cowboy and loves Dalton days, and he's going to spend a whole lot of time in the Dalton Vault. And he's going to spend a whole lot of time talking about Mattie Castleberry and the Rio Palm Mile.
Okay.
And then we have other docents that are industrial, and they want to talk about Premier Oil. They want to talk about Laterno, the Big Inch. And so all of those things are there. We've introduced a lot of hands-on, or not a lot, we're getting better with introducing some hands-on activities for kids, because I'll do a fourth grade school tour, and the parents or the chaperones are like, oh, this hasn't changed since I was in fourth grade. I'm like, I know. So we're working on that, because I don't want you to come in fourth grade and then you don't come back till you're with your kid who's in fourth grade.
Yeah.
We want return visitors, because it's like being intentional. You want to get them hooked. You want to find something that sparks that curiosity and gets them to come back, because every time they come back, you learn something new. And so with the museum, we talk about the founding of Gregg County, talk about the oil boom, talk about Kelly Plow, we talk about the Big Inch Pipeline, Laterno Industries, Kilgore College Rangerettes. They were the very first precision dance team in the world. Like Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders came from the Kilgore College Rangerettes. And the reason we have the Kilgore College Rangerettes is because the president of Kilgore College was trying to keep the football spectators in the stands at halftime instead of going out and partaking in adult beverages in their cars. So he went to the PE teacher and said, hey, I need help keeping people in the stands. Voila, here come the Kilgore College Rangerettes. And it worked. And so every precision dance team in the world, Kilgore College was the first one. Again, another fun little fact. We talk about the Great Texas Balloon Race. We talk about the Texas Rangers. Now we talk about, like, we built a replica Caddo hut for kids to get in, and we have a little dig site that they can put their hands on and dig through. We celebrate the artists and musicians of Gregg County. The song from Titanic, My Heart Will Go On, Celine Dion, monster hit, written by a guy from Longview. Thank you very much. Movies The Rookie and The Blind Side, directed by a guy from Longview. Hello. So we're trying to find something that is going to interest everyone. Like, everyone is going to find something that they're interested in or want to learn more about, so that you come back and maybe we kind of expand your base a little bit and expand your perspective.
That's neat. Kind of like presidential libraries. They change certain exhibits all the time.
So we have our Ed Center, we rotate exhibits through. We have 3 big ones. So we did Where Freedom Rides recently, which was the cowboy culture and how it led to the American identity, the rodeos, the Juneteenth rodeos, women in the rodeo. Wheels That Formed a Nation start next week, which is just going to be progress and how Gregg County, what happened in Gregg County and grew through Gregg County led to the American identity. And then we do our Christmas one. But we're putting in a permanent transportation exhibit, which is going to give some hands-on things for railroads and airplanes, things that for all ages, for someone that can be interested, so that, you come when you're in kindergarten, and then when you come back in 4th grade, it's something new. And when you come back in 7th grade, it's something new, because we're growing with you on the different exhibits.
Gotcha. Well, as we wrap this up, if you could leave our listeners with one thought about history, heritage, and community as we approach America's 250th birthday, what would that be?
They're all tied together, I think, right? So our heritage is our history. What we have inherited is all of the events and the milestones and everything in history that has shaped us who we are. And because we have all gone through these milestones, and whether it's national or local level, we are bound together, which is our community, I think. And I just go back to the same refrain, is that celebrate who you are and where you are. That doesn't mean you overlook or ignore failures. It just means that you celebrate overcoming them and your response to them. And that basically is our heritage, is perseverance and endurance and not quitting, and you're still pursuing the same freedom, whether it's freedom in economic decisions, freedom in education, freedom in the career, freedom in where you live or how you raise your kids. But that freedom, even though each individual choice looks different, that freedom is what binds us. And so that kind of creates the community that we live in. And so acknowledge the differences, but also celebrate the sameness, celebrate what it is that bonds us together.
Well, this has been a really great conversation and a reminder of how interconnected our local story is with not just each other, but with the larger story of America. So we really appreciate you, Jennifer.
Well, thank you so much for being on, and thank you to all of our listeners who tuned in. And we will see you in our next episode.
See you next time.